Everybody. So a few days ago, I made a video about Israel, what Israel's doing in the Gaza Strip. I played a video of a commander down in the Gaza Strip talking about how they're destroying Hamas infrastructure, they're moving the lines, they're conquering more and more of the Gaza Strip and choking out Hamas. A lot of you liked that video, got a lot of good feedback on it. And I wanted to talk about more of what's going on, both diplomatically and politically, diplomatically, regarding the Gaza Strip right now, what Hamas is up to over. And there's been some stuff happening over the last couple of days that's been a little bit under the radar because everyone's still focused so much on Iran and Lebanon. And I just want to raise an issue that should have been obvious to us, which is a little bit curious, which is this interview that I showed you in that video the other day with this commander in Gaza explaining exactly what Israel's doing and how they're taking more and more of the territory and choking out Hamas. Understand, this was obviously an approved interview with an IDF commander. And Prime Minister Netanyahu, who recently said, and he's said it more than once, that he's instructed the IDF to take control of more and more of the Gaza Strip, up to 70% of it. Think about the fact that he made that public. He wanted the world to know that. Israel is being very bold and very open about the fact that they are taking over more and more of the Gaza Strip in an effort to get rid of Hamas. So I want to talk about these issues and some of the other things that we're seeing. Let's start with this headline from a few days ago. Smotrich says plans drawn up to establish 3 Israeli settlements in Gaza. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich said Monday, that's this week, this past Monday, that Israel has prepared plans to establish 3 settlements in the Gaza Strip, and all that is needed to move ahead with the project is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's approval. His remarks came after he met with the mayor of Sderot, which is the biggest city in the Gaza envelope area. Smotrich said that Israeli Defense Forces should seize more than the 70% of Gaza that it currently controls, and that in his view, Jewish settlements in Gaza will act as a security belt for border communities in Israel. And we also have this headline from a few days ago. Israel said seeking to revive Gaza migration plan, rebranding it in bid to soften international opposition. Israel is seeking to revive its moribund plan for the voluntary migration of Gazans out of the Strip and has rebranded it an effort to soften the blanket international opposition to it, Channel 13 News reports, citing unnamed Israeli officials. Security agencies have in recent days been told to abandon the voluntary migration title due to global opposition, and it will from now on be officially referred to as a plan for free movement. The network cites officials familiar with ties with countries that could potentially receive Gazans as voicing optimism that the terminology change will persuade them to drop their current refusal to cooperate with the plan. And it'll make it easier to recruit other countries. A senior Israeli official is quoted as saying Jerusalem wants as many Gazans as possible to leave the Strip, viewing this as a contributing factor to any future plan implemented in the territory. So Hamas is freaking out over this. And this is a headline from today. Well, first, let me comment on what Smotrich is up to here. Listen, I'm all for settlements. I think that putting some settlements in the Gaza Strip would be justice. You can't just attack us, slaughter us, celebrate when our hostages and our raped women are paraded through your streets. You can't just do all that and then not lose territory. Okay? When you get attacked, you lose territory. That's all fair game. Besides the fact that Israel is within its rights, and I'm going to get to that a little bit later in the video about why it's totally legal for Israel to build settlements there. Also, security tends to improve when there's settlements. I think it's the right thing to do. That said, it's not going to happen. Smotrich knows it's not going to happen. He knows the political climate does not allow it to happen. So why is he doing this? He's doing this because of the elections that are coming up. There's going to be an election in Israel in October. Everyone's already ramping up their campaigns. The rhetoric is turning to kind of election campaign rhetoric. Smotrich's party is struggling right now. They are, the way it works in Israel is you have to get enough of a percentage of the vote to garner 4 seats in the Knesset in order to, that's the threshold to get in. And if you fall below that threshold, you don't get anything. And his party has been on the borderline between 4, right around 4 seats, maybe 5 in the good polls. So he's struggling, and he's trying to differentiate himself from the Likud, from Netanyahu's party, and from Ben Gvir's party, the other very right-wing party. And by zeroing in on the settlement issue, because he has done, it's true, the Smotrich and his party have done a tremendous amount for the expansion and growth of settlements throughout Judea and Samaria. So he's leaning into that, and he's signaling to potential voters who might vote Likud or might vote Ben Gvir, hey, if you really care about settling the land and about these types of issues, then I'm your man. And that's why he's doing it. He knows it has no chance of actually happening. So it's really just political posturing. That said, there's also the migration plan that we just read about. That is real. So this is a story from today, from Middle East Monitor, very anti-Israel site, Middle East site. This is July 2nd. It's from today. Hamas has called on the Arab League to convene an emergency summit to address what it describes as Israel's plans to displace Palestinians from the Gaza Strip, urging Arab states to adopt a unified political response. In a statement issued on yesterday, Hamas spokesperson Hazem Qassem said repeated Israeli statements about proposals concerning Gaza's population reflected what he described as the seriousness of efforts to displace Palestinians from the territory. Qassem argued that these plans are accompanied by military actions that, in his view, are destroying the conditions necessary for civilian life and forcing residents to leave the Strip. Israel's military actions are destroying Hamas. They're not destroying the conditions for civilian life. He called on the Arab League to hold an emergency summit to coordinate a collective response. According to Qassem, the issue extends beyond the Palestinian territories and poses a broader challenge to Arab national security. He said any displacement of Palestinians from Gaza would directly affect the security interests of neighboring Arab states, particularly Egypt. Now, why would it? Why would a bunch of Gazans moving into Egypt affect Egypt's security? Is it perhaps because they're dangerous? The Hamas spokesperson urged Arab governments to move beyond statements of condemnation and adopt what he described as practical political and diplomatic measures to prevent any displacement of Gaza's population. He also called for efforts to end the war, halt Israeli military operations in the Gaza Strip, and lift the blockade on the territory. Israel has repeatedly rejected accusations that it's pursuing a policy of forcibly displacing Gaza's population, while international discussions continue over post-war governance and the future administration of the territory. And let's add this in while we're at it. Hamas delegation, look at this one. Hamas delegation in Cairo to meet Egyptian officials, mediators on implementation of Gaza deal. This is from 2 days ago. A delegation of Hamas is set to have talks in Cairo with Egyptian officials and mediators on implementing the Gaza ceasefire agreement, the group said on Tuesday. The delegation's agenda prioritizes stopping escalating Israeli violations in the Gaza Strip and the daily killing and assassination crimes. You know who they're assassinating? Hamas leaders, said Taher al-Nunu, political advisor to the head of Hamas. Hamas would also seek guarantees that Israel allows the entry of Gaza's full needs, including materials required to repair hospitals, bakeries, and infrastructure, and implements the remaining terms of the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement, he added. Now, this is really rich. Here's Hamas saying that they want to implement the agreement. And later on in this, let's go a little further. They talk about moving to phase 2. Oh, that's not in this piece. Yeah, the roadmap includes the entry of an administrative committee and an international protection force, leading to a full Israeli withdrawal in all areas of the Gaza Strip. It does call for that, but let's take a look at the original agreement. You know what else the original agreement says? Here's clause 13. This is the 20-point Trump plan for Gaza, right? This is it. This is the big plan, the famous plan. So what does it say in clause 13? Hamas and other factions agree not to have any role in the governance of Gaza, directly, indirectly, or in any form. Should we read that again? Hamas is not to have any role in the governance of Gaza, directly, indirectly, or in any form. And here they are calling on calling for an Arab summit. And they're on their way to Cairo to have negotiations about the implementation. Listen, implementation of the deal, the first step in that is removing Hamas completely. Israel has to be very vocal about this. being called out as violating this or violating that. Hamas should not have any standing whatsoever. What's also interesting on the diplomatic front, I wonder where this call by Hamas for a summit of Arab leaders on Gaza is going to go. Because right now, look at the Arab world. You have the Gulf states who are pretty much lining up alongside Israel because their top priority is dealing with the Iran issue. We just saw the summit they had in Bahrain last week with Secretary of State Rubio, where their big concern was the Iranian proxies, ballistic missile programs, all their destabilization of the region. And you also have what's going on in Lebanon that's occupying a lot of people's attention. The Saudis are busy dealing with the Houthis down in Yemen. Is there enough bandwidth here? Excuse me. Is there enough bandwidth in the Arab world to deal with, or is there any willingness or any desire to come to the aid of Hamas right now in the Gaza Strip? I mean, even if they're going to call an Arab summit, Hamas is treating itself as the legitimate leaders of the people of Gaza. Now, if they are, so they have to be removed. If they're still there, they have to be removed. Who do they speak for? We have this story. Hamas maintains full control over Gaza after deterring Palestinian protests. This is just from a few days ago. Over the past 2 weeks, a campaign calling for protests against Hamas last Friday was circulated on social media. The protests were supposed to focus on the harsh living conditions in the Gaza Strip and delays in advancing the second phase of the U.S. brokered comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict. Hamas monitored the campaign and was prepared for the protests. In particular, it ramped up its deterrence efforts, such as publicizing the executions of people suspected of collaborating with Israel. The terrorist organization also launched a counter-campaign calling for protests against Israel, and former UN Middle East peace envoy Nikolai Mladenov, who's the head of the Board of Peace, over the failure of the talks he mediated with Israel, or he's the high commissioner, or whatever. He has some title, Mladenov. He's the head of the whole thing. Hamas pushed for the population to hold demonstrations near the yellow line, according to the IDF. So Hamas is struggling to keep its hold over its population. People are wanting to protest that they can't move to phase 2. Of course you can't move to phase 2 because you can't move to phase 2 until Hamas is fully removed. Now, what else does it say in this original plan? Look at item 12. No one will be forced to leave Gaza, and those who wish to leave will be free to do so. Those who wish to leave will be free to do so. Ever since the beginning of the war, the Egyptians, who are right there on the border with Gaza, have closed their border and did not allow Gazans to flee this war zone. And Article 14 of the what's it called? The Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Article 14 states everyone has the right to seek and enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution. So if Israel was starving and genociding the Gazans, why was Egypt let off the hook? How come Egypt didn't have to open their borders to allow these Gazans in to seek asylum from this terrible persecution? And what's more, we have this story. UNRWA has no place in New Gaza. Hamas rebukes U.S. Peace Council, because what happened was in the United Nations, the U.S. administration, the Board of Peace declared that UNRWA has no place in the New Gaza, because UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, turned out to really just be Hamas in UN uniforms. Right? We know that a lot of senior Hamas people were also employees of not senior Hamas people. A lot of employees of UNRWA had significant roles in Hamas, and there were a lot of UNRWA employees who participated in October 7th. The UNRWA schools are the schools in Gaza that were that have been teaching this genocidal Hamas ideology all these years. Hamas is UNRWA, and that's why they're freaking out about the possibility that UNRWA is going to go away. So this is from today. This article here. The Palestinian Resistance Movement, Hamas, condemned on Thursday, today, statements by the U.S. administration's Board of Peace declaring that UNRWA has no place in Gaza. The movement said targeting UNRWA is an attack on international legitimacy because the agency was established by the UN. Hamas warned that attempts to reduce UNRWA's mandate and replace it or halt its funding go beyond humanitarian issues and are aimed at undermining Palestinian historical rights. Yeah, they're terrified. So let's put all these stories together. The United States and the Board of Peace are saying UNRWA can't be a part of it. The deal itself that Israel signed, that everyone signed, that is supposed to be implemented, calls for Hamas to be removed and have no governing role, no role in the governance of Gaza directly or indirectly or in any form. Israel, meanwhile, is saying, okay, if no one's going to get rid of Hamas, we're going to do it ourselves. When it comes to settlements, I mentioned earlier that there's nothing illegal about settlements. Let me explain that. This has to do with the status of the Gaza Strip in Judea and Samaria. It is we commonly refer to these as occupied areas, and people then talk about settlements being illegal. Those two terms go together. Let me explain how they go together. It is against international law that if you occupy the territory of another country illegally, you're not allowed to move your population in there. If you occupy the territory of another country in war, in a circumstance where you're not allowed to keep it, you're not allowed to move your population in there. Okay? So if it's occupied territory of another nation, then settlements are illegal. So that the way the narrative goes is that this is Palestinian land that Israel occupies, and that's what makes it illegal. Problem is, it's not occupied. Why is it not occupied? And this is a technical thing. It's not occupied because the only way you can occupy territory of another sovereign nation is if there is a previous owner that is a sovereign nation. Both Judea and Samaria, known as the West Bank, both Judea and Samaria and the Gaza Strip, there is no sovereign nation that lays any claim to it, and that is a previous owner. Let me explain. Who owns the Gaza Strip right now? Well, Israel occupies it. Israel controls it. Okay, who controlled it before Israel? Well, Israel took it in 1967. Before Israel, Egypt held it from 1948 till 1967. But Egypt did not annex it. They did not make it part of Egypt. So they don't lay any claim to it. In fact, in 1979, when Israel gave the Sinai back to Egypt in the peace deal negotiated by President Carter, they tried to give the Gaza Strip back, and the Egyptians refused to take it back. Okay? So who's the previous owner of the Gaza Strip before Israel had it, before Israel holds it? Well, it ain't Egypt. They're gone. They're out of the picture. Before Egypt, it was part of the Palestine Mandate of the League of Nations that was managed by the British. They didn't own it either. Before that, it was the Ottoman Empire for 400 years. How far back are we going to go? There's no sovereign nation that lays claim to the Gaza Strip. It's not occupied territory. It's disputed territory. That's fair enough, but it's not occupied. Same with Judea and Samaria. Who owned it before Israel took it in 1967? Jordan. But Jordan tried to annex it at the time. No one recognized it. And since then, Jordan has formally given up their claim to it anyway. They did that in the early 90s. But there is no sovereign nation that was there before. So whose was it before that? Well, between 1948 and 1967, just like Gaza with Egypt, it was held by Jordan. Before that, British Mandate. Before that, Ottoman Empire. There is no sovereign nation that Israel took it from or that lays any claim to it. It is not occupied territory. It is disputed territory. That is true. It is not occupied. And therefore, there's nothing illegal about building towns there. There's nothing illegal about Israelis building villages in these territories. And that's why the Trump administration, in his first term, recognized that legal reality and declared that the official policy of the United States is that the settlements are not illegal because they're not illegal. Okay, so there's nothing illegal about Israel building settlements in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Is it wise? That's a debatable point that I don't want to get into. I think it does increase security. I'm fine with it. I like what Smotrich is doing, pushing the envelope there, but he's also doing it for political reasons, as I said. But on the other hand, diplomatically, is it the best look in the world? This is all a debatable point that's beside the point of what I'm saying here. My point here is to give you a level set of where we are. Israel's making progress in the Gaza Strip. They are working on figuring out ways to allow more Gazans to leave voluntarily. They are working on that. Hamas is freaking out. Hamas is trying to get the Arab world on board and in their corner again. They're calling for this summit. They're going to Cairo to meet with people. But the problem is that everyone knows that nothing can move forward until they are removed, which is why there is a nascent protest movement that's trying to get off the ground in the Gaza Strip that Hamas is brutally repressing. That is the situation as we have it today with Gaza. I hope you found this video helpful. Please like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. And we'll keep, I'll try to keep you as updated as possible on all of these stories. God bless.